Hey guys, welcome back. Just wanted to take you through um, setting up MongoDB, and this is kind of a thought that I had, almost like a three-part series. I set up Mongo, and then earlier we set up a Node app, and then kind of have it communicate with those, and maybe serve up a little React app, little React page, so that you can do some CRUD operations. With the MongoDB. So kind of a MERN stack application, but just kind of in pieces because first the video could get too long, and then you kind of want to go in pieces to really understand things. And I had a teacher that would say, I could show you this stuff, but the way that I go through things is, um, you you could do something, but then, or I could tell you something, and then you'd say, no, I'll just follow their rules. But you shouldn't. The first thing you should do is question it and go try it and say it doesn't work and hey, you missed a step. That's how we pick up these little in between, like little nuggets of information, so that we can understand the process a little bit better. So I want to take you through. So I got my screen going here. So first thing is, you bring up your terminal. I'm on a Mac. First thing you want to do is you could start Mongo. So I just start Mongo. MongoD starts the service or the server, and then you can connect to it using Mongo, and then do all the queries that you want. And I'll show you an interactive query REPL, however you want to view it. So right here, Mongo not found, that means it's not there. So I did this on purpose. I cleaned out my Mongo. Obviously, I work on it quite a bit. So here, we actually want to install Mongo. So how do you do that? Well, you could go and manually install it and then go through all the rigmarole of setting up each piece, but fortunately we have things like package managers and things that kind of manage these things, and as long as you do it that way, and I stress you do it that way, then stuff doesn't get lost. So like on an uninstall, you do it through the package manager's way, or some sort of managers software managers type way. And when you do it that way, and it's meant to be done that way, then it takes care of most of the cleanup or install and does things correctly. So if you start hacking away, you're going to have those kind of problems later. So let's go ahead. We like to use Homebrew. I have that installed. So we could actually do brew. Let's see, I actually have the command here. Don't want to waste too much time for you guys. So we could, so that's the start command. We could just brew install, and kind of intuitive, brew install MongoDB. Who would have thought? Just a great little command that will do things. Brew install, brew uninstall, and then you get most of it. And then there's a lot of configuration stuff that you have to kind of clean up if you want a complete uninstall, which I'm going to show you right at the end of this, because it annoys me when other things are hanging around. Even though it works, you're not fully satisfied. Is like, is it really off my computer? Is it, and then when you go to install it again, you're like, well, why is it there? This thing doesn't work. Remember, we use the brew package manager to install these things correctly. So if it's clean, it's a nice clean install. If it's not, you may run into a problem. Maybe not. Just running this. Okay, well, that was done pretty quick. Catch you in the morning. This computer's pretty quick, actually. Alright, so we got that going. Let's check it. MongoDB. The other thing is, if you install manually, you have to do, you can run the command to run off of the config file, and you can find that documentation on the Mongo site. And that's great, but then you have to have multiple terminal windows up and stuff. So I want to show you like this. If you come from a Windows world, you could just start up the service, runs in the background, something manages it, and then you can just use the same window, because I'm kind of a minimalist and I like to focus on one if possible without switching around, and then go ahead and bring up the REPL or bring up the interactive shell so that you can run commands like crazy. And then when you want to stop it, you stop it. But for most part, you kind of want it running, sometimes on startup of your computer, so that you can get to work right away. So MongoD, let's go MongoD. So it is, okay, so it's, so you could do MongoD, but there's actually, sorry, that other command that we had, you actually want Brew Services this. So I just got burned by my own advice to you, and learn from my mistakes so you don't make these mistakes. So basically, Brew Services start Mongo. So like Brew Services, start up the service in the background, and then start the MongoDB service. So if you do that, now I have no problems. You see how it just kind of started, and there's no shutdown. I have to run sudo, to start up something and run as admin, and maybe you might have your setup as admin. You don't need any of that stuff. Use it this way, and it's easier. I'm not saying that you shouldn't do the other way. It's if you prefer to do that, and you have the technical, the muscle memory to do it, then by all means do it if it's fast enough. This is just one way that might get you going a little bit faster in the early start. So it's not started. How do we know if it's even working? You should question me like, okay, great, Steve. Is that even working? Like, I don't believe you. Like, well, let me show you. Let me prove it to you. Mongo. And then now I have the shell. So how do you know that? One simple command you always do is like show databases, show DBs. Luckily, you don't have to type it out like on when you use like MySQL or MariaDB, something like that. You could just do show DBs. And Mongo does this. And then, so we go straight into our next part. Nice little segue, actually. So what if I created a DB? I want to insert some records and then just kind of get some data in there. Well, we'll end up doing that later in the Node app, but first things first, we want to do it. Can you even do it directly to the DB in the shell? And so now it's like, well, yeah, I could do it in some of these standard admin, config, and local DBs. But let's create another one. Let's create a DB here. How do you do that? You don't have to create DB or something. Watch this. Use, and then I'm going to call it Steve. Let's call it Steve Test DB. Boom. And then now that's it. You're in the DB. And it's like, now I'm going to show DBs. Uh-oh, why is it not there? It's like, what the? I just made it. I probably can install. Is Mongo screwed up? No, it's not. It doesn't show anything until you have any collections in there. If you know any NoSQL or Mongo, you have to have something in there in order to do it, in order for it to show when you do show DBs. So let's do that real quick. So I know that I'm there. So I switched to use Steve Test. So I'm actually there. So what you can do is when you do DB, if you look up on the Mongo documentation, it'll tell you all about it. On a side note, I stress using the core documentation. It'll get you past the fluff. And basically, when you get more experience, you'll see like get past the fluff, read this stuff. I mean, they made it. They tell you how to do it. You go to some Stack Overflow, that'll give you little hints on like little gaps and the good nuggets. But that's what these videos are for. We're trying to fill those gaps and try to tell you exactly what to do without you believing me. I want to show you and prove to you that it's wrong. That way I learn from it. If it's wrong, maybe make a follow-up video. And then if not, then and the fact that you see it, plain proof in front of you. So now, okay, so where's our Steve test? What if I create a collection here? So I call DB, so DB dot, let's say products, and then dot insert, and you'll know, because after you do this many times, you'll kind of get these muscle memory commands. Now I want to insert something. Well, what you do is, since it's all JSON, you can actually put some JSON in there. So if I do something like, let's say name, and then let's put a string in there. Let's say I'm going to insert, I shouldn't have called it products, but you get the idea. It's whatever the collection you want. Let's call it names. Actually, we haven't inserted this. Let's just call it names. We usually run bin from the command line too, but I didn't have that set up, so I apologize. Let's call it names. Something stupid like that. And then here, let's call it, put in Steve. And then close that. Okay. Let's go ahead and add that. Okay, so you see how it leads you to believe that it's there, but you should never believe it. You got to run and check. You trust but verify, I guess you can say. And so now, how do we do that? We do db.names.find, and let's just find all of them. If you put nothing there, it finds all of them, which is kind of neat. That's kind of how a search works too. So it's kind of intuitive in that sense. So what if I do that? Hey, there's name Steve. It's in the names. It's like, what collections do we have? There's tons of commands to show you all the collections. You can query this up. Look on the Mongo site. I don't have to tell you how to do that. Everyone knows how to Google stuff these days, or Bing stuff. Whatever is your favorite search engine. Go ahead and do that. So that is how you insert there. Now I want to take you through how do you uninstall it. So that sometimes get messy. You could do brew uninstall Mongo, but then there's all this stuff lying around, like the configuration for your services, like something was set up there so it can run services in the background on your Mac or your Windows machine or something like that. You need to uninstall those too, unless your installer or your uninstaller uninstalls everything. Sometimes you have to do some cleanup. It won't harm anything. It still won't run, but So actually, let me take you through. Let me don't believe me. You shouldn't believe me on this. So here we go. So I do brew, it should be, let's say it should be, and you get in trouble with the word should, brew uninstall MongoDB. Just like how we installed it, right? It should stop the service, it should uninstall all the files and give me a nice clean thing. It should do that, right? And then you say that's how it should be, and I'm gonna bitch and complain about like it not having stuff and then that. Well, you have to know what your machine's doing. You have to know that there's other stuff. Well, first off, if I do this, let's see if it does this. First off, let's just see MongoD. Okay, well that doesn't even exist, so you can't even do MongoD. But even if I do, the weird thing is that if you do services start MongoDB, it will still start this. It'll actually say, okay, so if we do, let's do stop. Let's see if that works. Okay, so stop. Okay, well that might take a while. That's not good. Okay, it's not that long. Let's start it up again. Let's see if that works. Okay, we just started up again. And it's like, hey, it should start up, but now you screwed everything up because you did the brew uninstall. So some of it did work. So it won't work, but there's a lot of other stuff involved. So that bugs me if you're kind of a minimalist like me. So you want to go to, you could go up in Google or Bing or look something up. I should just say look something up because you guys know the tools on how to do things like this. But I actually have this great thing. I'm gonna post in the first comment when I post the video, and it's right here. Uninstall MongoDB for macOS completely. This was perfect for me. There's a lot of steps. I'm not completely proficient on all of this on uninstall, but you saw I already kind of stopped MongoDB from working, and I could be happy with it and move on to the next thing and not waste my time. But I need to know that stuff is clean, and this is good practice to understand Mongo and all the stuff that gets installed on macOS anyway. Okay, so let's go through this. So I copy this. Just basically, let me just clear all this garbage out here. Okay, so you launch this. There's grep Mongo. You go through all these steps, unload the launching agents, because there could be other things underneath launching these things. And you just go through and okay, well actually all these are, this is going pretty good. Last time it didn't do this, I think. Okay, so it did. So see how it didn't bring up anything here? So it did remove something from the P list, probably some sort of process here. Let's launch this again. Let's launch launch CTL. I'm not sure what that is actually, but let's run that. Okay, so it removes some more garbage that you don't need. Otherwise, there'd be an error, couldn't find it, or maybe there'd be something blocking it because it would be running. Make sure all the processes are killed. You don't need anything eating up your Mac anymore. That's killed in case that was there. Uninstall MongoDB. We did that. Let's just do it again. What happens? This is how you learn stuff. You just probe and just keep running. Just destroy your machine. Okay, so it's not in the. I like to make sentences when I learn things like local user cellar. Mongo's not in the cellar, so there's no such keg. So it's kind of a homebrew type thing. That's the language around it, and apparently uses the cellar. You put the brew in the cellar. Duh. Okay, that's pretty stupid. But anyway, it makes sense, doesn't it, with the storyline, and that's how it clicks with people. Put it in English. And then if you installed it manually, we did not. We used the brew install. Let's go here. Just make sure that nothing is there. You can see reconfirming no Mongo files. You could just grep everything at a high level and just destroy all that stuff. Essentially, that's what an uninstall will probably be. Hopefully you wouldn't break anything else, but that's how we learn. So that's not there. Last thing is, this is where the data goes, I believe. Sometimes you run into Mongo errors. It's like, hey, you haven't set up your data directory. Set this up, everything works peachy. But again, if you use it through Homebrew, you let Homebrew do the work. It's gonna work. I'm gonna guess probably 9 times out of 10. You can't say 10 because software stuff happens. Maybe a previous installation. So it got rid of the data, I think, as you saw on the screen. Let's go through the last few things, and actually that's it. That's it. Here it is. So here's the tutorial right here. I just did a quick thing. I'm gonna post this down below. Thanks for listening. A lot more tech stuff coming up. Sorry I neglected the tech stuff. I love the tech stuff, but that stuff takes a little more preparation, and video is king. But I also have a lot of thoughts. We'll be having interviews later on. A lot of corporate colleagues that I used to work with and work with. Well, probably just that I work with. I been at haven't been at my gig that long, and but maybe later. You want to get insights on what it's truly like. You go through interviews. That's not really how it is inside. Everyone knows that. You feel and you get your own experience, and you draw your own conclusions when you start assessing the company and you make your thing. I want to tell you things later on, like what's a company to what's something that might be some red flags or alarms. Anyway, that's a side note. This is how you do Mongo. Very, very simple level. It's all JSON. It's all kind of sort of strings in there. You saw how I brought up the interactive shell. Use Homebrew to do it. Make your life a little bit easier. You don't have to do it that way, but I recommend doing it that way. And that's it for now. So see you next time.